Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Not bad, not bad. Trying to update a Grafana dashboard.
That doesn't sound great. Find that to be a very tedious process the few times I've had to do it.
Yes. Well, this one has a query for Felix int data plane apply time seconds bucket, which, as far as I can tell, doesn't exist.
Hmm.
And it appears to be a query you added 8 years ago. So I'm not going to ask you, do you remember? Because it's 8 years ago.
Oh, I added that. Wow. Um, I'm pretty sure that metric used to exist at least.
hmm
And I know Sean removed some metrics recently, but I wasn't sure that was one of them.
He doesn't think it's been removed. He thinks that these metrics hadn't changed since 2020. So
Yeah,
anyway, I'll ask you more later.
that's good. Hey, Eric.
Hey, enjoying stand up that is usually at this time and it's on my calendar. Like, oh, nope, I need to go here.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, this might be a very quick meeting. Um,
No demos?
I did not get a demo together because while it's still possible, I mean, it's definitely possible to do a demo. We're also kind of frantically trying to finish everything off.
Yeah,
So I just haven't had the time.
fair.
It's one of those things, like in 2 weeks' time, maybe it will have turned out that I did have the time.
Yeah, but you don't know that now.
Don't know that now. Maybe if daylight savings hadn't taken an hour away from me in the morning.
Yep. Yeah, for us, daylight savings happens the weekend before KubeCon.
Yep. Yeah, this this one is not fun going this direction. I guess we can do a quick spin through because I suspect this is going to be quick and then we can all uh, go away and do other things. Um, so yeah, I guess the big thing is still 3.30. Actually, does somebody want to take notes? It should be a pretty easy
Yeah, I
job
got it.
today, I think. Cool. Thank you, Eric. 3.30 is still coming down the pike. Um, we got uh, code freeze coming up and branch cut expected at the end of next week. It's current schedule. So, um, yeah, to my comment about being busy, we're all just trying to get stuff in before that happens. I think we can refer to the previous meetings notes on like what the payload for this is, because to my knowledge that hasn't changed at all, which is good. We're still on track to include everything um, that we wanted. Um, Most notably the new flow data and staged policy capabilities, but also a few other things. It's a pretty big release. Definitely check it out.
We would definitely be demoing it at KubeCon.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, if you're going to be at KubeCon, swing by and see us. We got some cool stuff to show. I won't be there, but Lance will be. I think we've also got some patch releases in the works, but they're a little bit smaller. So I see 329.3 is scheduled for the end of the month, and that's mostly just going to be CV updates, updating the version of Golang that we build with and the version of Kubernetes that we import, and probably any other bugs that we can manage to get backported in that time frame. So nothing major there. And similarly for 328.4, same deal there, but I think targeted for a little bit after the 29.3 release, so probably early April. I think that's all I got for updates. Anybody else have things we should talk about here?
This meeting move time. I know there was talk of that.
Yeah, that's it. I want to. I haven't been able to get it together to do that. We definitely need to do that because there's a bunch of people who can't make Wednesdays. Yeah, it hasn't been done yet because here we are.
And in all likelihood won't get done this month because of the KubeCon build up and stuff. So I guess next month at the same time, and then we talk about it.
Yeah, unless I manage to get the meeting invite moved, and I'll announce it in Slack too if I manage to do it. I'm gonna keep this one on my list to do. Hopefully it bubbles up soon. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't know, it's sort of off topic, but I've got a few captive people here. You see that thread I sent in Slack about the CSI node driver, Eric, Pedro, Lance? I know you saw it.
I saw you ask why.
Yeah, we have this daemon set installed by default. And I believe that for Calico, the only thing it's used for is like providing sockets to Decastes when using Istio integration. We use it for a few other things in enterprise, but I'm wondering why we need to install it by default. I vaguely remember when we did this switch from the old Flex Volume driver to the new CSI plugin. I think we turned it on by default as a means to not break people on upgrade because there was something there, but I wonder if it has been long enough that we can now turn it off by default, and anybody who's got it running will keep it running.
I've definitely advised a few people in Calico users to turn it off.
Yeah. Maybe I will throw together a quick PR to do that and see what happens.
So what? How do you? I don't remember. Is that one of the fields where by default we'll write a value to it, but you can turn it off by setting that to none?
Yeah,
Is that one?
exactly.
Okay.
And I'm like 95% sure that all it does is run an extra daemon set that does nothing for most people.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing for most people.
Yeah. Important for some and useless for many.
Yep. And I believe that was done because FlexVol was installed everywhere for everyone, and rather than write new code for enabling this in only the places where we need it. It was easier to do just a straight switch from FlexVol to CSI rather than figure out all the times it might be needed.
Yeah.
So Casey, the PR you're suggesting is basically just defaulting that, not defaulting that field to a value, just default it to none.
Yep. I think that's what I would do.
Would we leave it turned on? I think EKS is one of the places where it's needed. Is that would we default it? Yeah, would we have operator default it differently for EKS?
What's it needed for in EKS?
I'm basing that on what was said in the thread.
Let's see. Let's see what was said in the thread. Oh yeah, Reza said that. Yeah, we should figure that out. Oh, apparently you were working on a problem.
Yeah, but I didn't write down what it was about, and Reza wrote down that it existed, but not what the problem was.
Interesting.
It will have been something from Calico users, but
yeah, maybe we can try to dig that thread back up and see what was going on.
Talking of Calico users, I have a question when we finish this.
I'm happy to move on.
So there was a Calico user asking about RHEL 9 support.
Yes.
And they were having trouble with, and I think we came to the conclusion it was SE Linux. And I suggested trying out the so there's an RPM. If you look in Calico Enterprise, there's an RPM for an SE Linux profile that that allows Calico to work on RHEL 9. So I suggested they try that. If they come back and say that works, probably we should do something in the open source docs and maybe move that RPM or have an equivalent to RPM in open source, right?
Yeah, seems right to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I like. I think we've mostly to date just said we should be turning off SE Linux, but that's not an option for some people.
Yeah, it's a really ugly option.
Yeah. Yeah, we should just do that, I think.
Okay.
Speaking of RHEL, at least I think this was somehow related to RHEL. Did you, Casey, see the I think it was an operator. Somebody created an operator bug or issue about an alternate on some alternate x86 platforms or chips. A problem. You seen that?
This is not ringing any bells.
Okay.
Sorry.
Because it was suggested, like there was, I don't know, if we upgraded something related to, I guess I didn't, or maybe they were suggesting we switch to the rail base image or something. I don't, what do we use right now? We're
We
using that.
use UBI for
Yeah,
building, and then we probably copy stuff into a Scratch
yeah.
container.
I don't know. It seemed like a. I don't know. They also had to, I think, replace or have it had to mount in different libraries into the image or something, which seemed like it was like getting off off base.
Yeah, sounds a little much. If you can find it, or if you see it again, just tag me on it.
Sure.
All right,
We done?
I think we're probably done. I'm hearing no more topics from anybody, so we can get back to it. Maybe I can make it into the office before my next meeting.
All right. Thanks, Casey.
Cool. Thank you.
See you guys.
Yeah.